Hey, English 1, you probably noticed today that I had to delete this assignment and then recreate it immediately thereafter. So if you haven't been active on Google Classroom today, perhaps that happened without you knowing. But it is still an assignment and it is still due Sunday. Nothing's changed except for I attached the wrong document. So now I have attached the correct document. Now that letter from Birmingham jail will probably take you a good bit to read. So if I were pacing out my week, I would have done my pre-write on Monday, my reading Tuesday, Wednesday, with of course my close reading questions next to it, and then finish up my close reading questions on Thursday and Friday. So I have no work to do over the weekend. That's always the goal. All right. So the actual close reading assignment, and if you did look at the close reading questions, you probably noticed it was just the pre-write for a second time. So this makes more sense. This is something I purchased from Teachers Pay Teachers, so that's the explanation for the format. These are the questions that you need to answer while you're reading or after reading. It does require you to use direct evidence, direct quotations with specific evidence in it to address your claim. So it would probably be a good thing to have up while you're reading. All right, question 1. I just want to go through these and explain them to you, kind of like I would in class before you start working. King faced criticism by a group of clergymen like people of the church, for being in Birmingham. Explain this criticism and his response to it. What is his rationale for being there? Being there might be some confusion here. Are we talking about being in jail because it's a letter from Birmingham jail? Or are we talking about being in Birmingham, period? We're talking about being in Birmingham. Okay, so what is his rationale for being there? Make sure you include direct quotations that support it. Is that direct quotation enough to answer the question? No. Okay, you're using direct quotations as evidence to support your claim. So it's like that ICE strategy. It's that C. You've got to explain the connection to your claim, the connection to the question, essentially. 2, how does he answer the charge of being an outsider, or the accusation, I suppose would be a good synonym. 3, explain King's belief about the interconnectedness of communities all across the United States. Interconnectedness. How are we all connected? So even though he's not from Birmingham, he's actually from Atlanta, he argues that there's an interconnectedness of communities if you are a part of the United States. So what is his belief about that? What does he mean by interconnected? And do you agree with this concept? So that part, of course, the do you agree with this concept, does not require direct quotations because it is a personal opinion, but what precedes it does require direct quotation. 4, what are the 4 basic steps of nonviolent direct action that King discusses? Feel free to bullet those, feel free to number those, but make sure they're in complete sentences. Why does he include these in his argument? 5, well, actually, let me go back to 4 real quick. Why does he include these in his argument? Y'all remember, this is still a study of rhetoric. So go back to everything that we've talked to prior to this moment and consider how this appeals to his audience. Think about logos, think about ethos, think about pathos, think about who his audience is specifically. Who is this letter to? What I love about studying a letter is that there is a specific, authentic audience that we can discuss. So consider what the appeal is to that. Is it an appeal on logic, emotion, or credibility? Okay, 5. How does King reply to the notion that African Americans should wait for social justice? This idea of waiting becomes very big in the body of his letter. 6, how does King differentiate between just and unjust laws? What makes a law just and what makes a law unjust? How does he defend his actions through his distinction? So you can probably assume that he's being accused of committing a crime, but based on his description of what just and unjust is, how does he defend his actions? And what examples does he provide to support his claim? Feel free to just include one example of just and one example of unjust, because just like the question that precedes it, the idea of waiting, this is a pretty lengthy part of the letter. 7, what is King's response to being called an extremist? How does he change the connotation of the word so that it works in his favor? Connotation. Remember, guys, you have the whole world at your fingertips right now. So if you're unfamiliar with a word, use the internet. Look it up first, right? But connotation is one part of a definition of a word. We've got denotation and connotation. Denotation is the dictionary definition, right? If you went to Webster's and looked it up, that's the denotative definition. Connotative is all the words and feelings associated with it. And I'm going to explain that more in just a second. So give me a second to do part 2 here.